Hi, welcome back to the Free Motion Quilting Whole Cloth Row by Row project, part 2. At this point, you should have your center medallion done in your first row, and it should look like this. Well, let's take away all those markings, and this is what we end up with. Look at how you've molded that fabric and batting until you've created a magnificent skill level of hills and valleys. I'm really excited to work on the ends now with you, and I'll show you how to do that without ever having to cut your thread. Because I've already shown you how to stitch this type of flower, I've gone ahead and stitched it out, and we'll take it up from there. Now that we're down here, we're going to start treating this very much like Luminosity. Luminosity is a series of programs to teach your addled brain how to think logically. And that's what we're going to do now. We want to get back up to this flower, and we have to figure out how we're going to get there from here to there. So if I follow along, you can see that there's a solid line underneath there, so I can go down there, around, up, and up to get to the flower. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to ignore everything else in its path. I just want to get to that point. Even though this particular thing goes out to a point and down, I'm going to ignore that for now. I'm just going to stay on the left-hand side of this and work myself up the stem, and now I'm going to do the bottom part of this flower. Whoops, sorry. Didn't mean to bump the camera. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. I'll keep going around. Okay, so that part's accomplished. Now, let's do the middle part of this flower. Remember, we're going to go around this circle, and then we're going to do a fine grid in here. And again, why are we doing this? It's because we want to push the batting down in this area to allow these little scallopy parts to puff out. And we're done with that. We'll stitch around the center part again, and let's stitch over to this part. Now we're ready again to do the scallop and the fillers. And since you've already seen me do that many times, I'm going to stop the video and go ahead and do that part, and then I'll show you where we're going from there. We're at the point where we have the flower almost done. We have the center done, we have the scallops done, we have the paisleys filled in, and I'm starting to come around here, but do you see what we have coming up? There's no way to get to this without breaking thread and coming back to it unless we do it now. So I'm going to stitch over And now I'm going to go up the branch. I'm going to go around that circle. And in order to have these petals stand up, I'm going to pretty much fill this circle in pretty good. Okay, now I have a leaf there, so do I want to finish that leaf or do I want to finish the petal? Well, we can come down here, go around the leaf, and no matter what we do, we have to do some backtracking, but we're back to doing the petals again. Finish the branch again. We're going to come up here, do the center, and let's fill this in. And let's do the petals. So in our previous exercises in Back to the Basics, we always had our eye on where we're going next. That is preparing you for what we're doing now, because we have to keep our eye on where we're going next. So we don't have to stop cutting thread or do more backtracking that's necessary. So now we want to get down to this flower. But I also want to do this branch. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and backtrack just a little bit down the branch, around the petal, keep going with the branch. Now I know that I'm going to do a series of straight up and down fills in between these areas. And since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and fill that in so I don't have to come back and do it later. Basically, it was just a couple lines straight up and down. So now we're ready to do this flower. Let's fill it in. We're doing the leaves and Back to the Basics. And we're doing the scallops and Back to the Basics. That's all we're doing here. Okay, now we're ready to complete the rest of this branch. Now we want to complete the rest of this flower, but we need to fill this part in right here first. Now we're ready. Okay, we need to get over here so we can finish this stem. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to stitch right along my previous stitches. And then I'm going to come down, and there we go. Now, while we're here, we might as well finish this side. So let's close this gap right here. Keep going. Now you do not have to follow the same stitching order that I'm using. I'm just showing you how you have to kind of think it through when you have a bunch of designs that aren't necessarily connected to each other, and you don't want to have to like do this flower and then stop and cut your thread, and do this flower and then stop and cut your thread, then do these flowers and stop and cut your thread. You want to think of a way that you can do this without having to stop and cut your thread. So sometimes that means a little bit of back stitching. Sometimes that means starting and stopping the stitching for a particular segment of the design in a different place than you thought you would. But logically it makes sense because now you can accomplish what you're setting out to do. So, for example, I could go all the way down here and around. And I think if I did that, then I could come around here, stop, and I still wouldn't really be in position to do these feathers because I need this stitch first, and if I stitch that now, I'd still have to stop. So let's just go around this flower right here. That's this bud. Okay, that brings us to the center. And we'll just do a little narrow grid work there, just to hold the batting down. Now let's come around the outside of this bud. And now I'm right here where this leaf is. So I can continue to fill that up. So I'm going to go on this side first. So I can come up here and fill in the stem. Now I can do this part. Backtrack. Do this vein in the center. Do this leaf. And do my vein in the center. Okay. There comes a time when all good things end, and this is one of them. Unless I backtrack down to here. So let's do that. We don't have to cut the thread yet. So and you can see some of my mark disappear whenever I steamed away the lines for the center part so I could show you. So let's just go up here. Now we have this little doohickey that's hanging off here, so let's go ahead and stitch that. But we also have this that's hanging off of that, so let's finish that up. Let's back up to close that gate up. Now I can't cross over because there's no line there to cross over, but I can sneak down here And get this part in. And I can backtrack down. And I can start working my way around here. So let's see where we're going to go next. We need to finish this up. And now we come to another point that we have another bud down here sitting by itself. So we can finish that up. But do you see how you have to think it through? I kind of find it a fun challenge to see how far I can go before I have to break thread. Okay, now we need to get down on this side of the stem. That was pretty easy. Now we started this whole stitching right here, so we need to connect that stitching line before we go on. So here. Now I could have stopped here and kept going up to create the stem, but I want to go back here so I can do these feathers, and I need to start at this end in order to be able to do that. So I'm just going to backtrack my way around. Until I get to the point that I can start my feathers. Now if you're not good at backtracking, it's okay if you want to stop and take a break, but you can stop and take a break right now. Just leave your needle down in your fabric so it's not going anywhere. Take a stretch break. Get a coffee, get a tea, get a glass of wine, and now you're ready to roll again. So let's go up these feathers and we'll go from there. Now I'm going to do these feathers in a bump back style, which means I'm going to bring the feather plume to the anchor point, and then I'm going to stitch along the top of the plume until I get to the point where it connects with the next one, and stitch to the anchor point. Now I'm going to stitch along the anchor, come up, touch the previous plume, stitch along the top, come down, Stitch along the anchor, touch the plume, stitch along the top, stitch along the anchor, and back to the anchor point. So I'm going to stop here and leave you on your own. You see how we can completely stitch this without having to tie off thread. I can't wait to see your results. So we have the design all done, but it does need a little bit of oomph, as you can see from the picture that I posted. How do we do that? Well, first we're going to echo the design. Now you can see I've already started to do that here, and I'm echoing about 1/4 of an inch away. And there are some places where you will not be able to go completely around the design because it's let me turn this around so you can see, because it interferes with something else. So we'll just do our best. What we're doing is continuing around this design in an echo to help to make that puff out even more. And you see the difference between that over here. I guess you can't see that. You'll see the difference between this and how it's puffed out compared to this that's puffy, but it still leaves a little bit of flatness. So we're going to continue on. Again, like I said, anywhere between 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And again, you have to look ahead to see what's coming up, just like you did when you were doing the design itself. Now here, we couldn't go all the way back down in here and get 1/4 of an inch, so I just did a little point and I came back out. And I'm going to take a break here because the sun's starting to pour in the window and it's causing a lot of shadows here. So I'm going to shut the blinds so we don't have the shadows on the quilt. So stand by. There, that's better. Now you can see what I'm doing a little bit better, I think. So we'll continue on with the echoing. Now I'm not going to echo the whole thing in a video. I just wanted to give you an idea of how you fill in certain areas. Like here, we're just going to echo over top of the other line. Move this pin out of the way. And when you're doing a point, make sure you go up far, 1/4 of an inch away from the tip of the point, so that when you come down, you have room for that clearance. And here we're just going to hit that tip, and again a 1/4 of an inch away, and then we can come down. So just continue on in this manner until you get the entire design echoed. Just like we did for the center part of the design. Join us for part 3 for the final molding of our row 1. See you there.